I never expected a bridge in the middle of the Utah desert to change the way I looked at my own life. In fact, when my husband and I first drove toward Mexican Hat, I almost missed it completely. But that bridge led me to a story, and that story became an unexpected answer to prayers that changed me. A few months ago, my husband and I were driving through southeastern Utah when we pulled over to look at a group of buildings built directly into the canyon wall. Then we noticed the bridge, the one we had just driven across. At first glance, it's easy to overlook. It's a little narrow, a little worn. But when you take another look, you realize this bridge is carrying more than traffic. It's carrying a name. The Jason R. Workman Memorial Bridge. And seeing that name made me pause, because names like that don't just appear on bridges by accident. They're placed there intentionally. Who was Jason? Why was his name placed on the bridge? At the time, I was carrying questions of my own. Living with FND has changed the way I travel. It's changed what I can do and how I see myself. Before this trip, I had been praying about what comes next, about purpose, about whether the stories I felt drawn to tell actually mattered. I wasn't looking for an answer on a bridge, but sometimes answers arrive in unexpected places. What I didn't realize at the time was that this stretch of road has been an important crossing point for more than a century. Before the modern bridge existed, people crossed the San Juan River here, using ferries and primitive river crossings. The San Juan was not an easy river to deal with. Floods could come quickly. Sandbars shifted constantly. The canyon banks were steep and difficult to navigate, which meant crossing the river could be unpredictable and sometimes dangerous. By the early 1900s, people decided the area needed a permanent bridge. So engineers built a narrow wire suspension bridge across the canyon near Mexican Hat. The historic photos of the bridge are a little terrifying. It was narrow, high above the river, and it swayed. Everything moved across that bridge. Sheep herds, wagons, pack animals, mining equipment. Early automobiles carefully inching across the span one at a time. Southeastern Utah was beginning to grow because of mining activity. This crossing became incredibly important. Workers had to haul bridge materials deep into canyon country using wagons and early trucks. They battled heat, difficult terrain, and isolation just to create a permanent crossing over the San Juan River. Even after it was built, the bridge constantly struggled against the landscape. Floods damaged sections of it. Fires caused problems. Heavy mining trucks strained the cables. By the 1940s, the old suspension bridge was having trouble handling the weight of ore trucks coming through the region. Apparently, some drivers even had to unload or transfer cargo before attempting the crossing because the bridge couldn't safely support the full weight. And the crossing itself sounded nerve-wracking. The roadway was extremely narrow. Early versions had little to no guardrails, and strong canyon winds could cause the bridge to sway. If two vehicles met in the middle, one driver sometimes had to back up off the bridge. Eventually, the old suspension bridge became too outdated for modern traffic. In the early 1950s, a new steel and concrete arch bridge was built beside the original crossing. That bridge still stands today. And in 2016, the state of Utah officially renamed it the Jason R. Workman Memorial Bridge, which finally brings us back to the question I started with. Who was Jason? As I began researching, I learned that Jason R. Workman grew up not far from this bridge in Blanding, Utah. He later became a U.S. Navy SEAL and was killed in action in Afghanistan in 2011 during the Extortion 17 mission. He was only 32 years old. And years later, this bridge near the landscape that raised him became part of his legacy. Now, every traveler who crosses the San Juan River here crosses over his name. Jason's legacy doesn't end at this crossing. As I continued researching, I discovered a foundation and legacy account created in his honor. Part of the work they do is provide scholarships to graduating seniors in Jason's name, continuing to invest in future generations from the same communities and landscapes that shaped him. Now, if you'd like to learn more about Jason and the work being done to preserve his legacy, you can visit the foundation on Instagram at Jason R. Workman Legacy FND. The more I learned about Jason's story, the more I found myself reflecting on the kind of impact one life can have. When I first saw Jason's name on the bridge, I knew nothing about him. By the end of my research, I found myself thinking about a scripture from John, chapter 15, verse 13. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man laid down his life for his friends. Some names are remembered because of what people accomplished. Others are remembered because of what they were willing to give. This bridge carries more than traffic across the San Juan River. It carries the memory of a life lived in service to others. And the more I learned about Jason, the more I found myself thinking about legacy. Not the kind of legacy most of us imagine. Not fame, not recognition, just impact. A life lived in such a way that years later, people still remember your name, tell your story, and continue the work you cared about. Standing there in the desert, I found myself wondering, what does it mean to live a life that continues to bless people, even after you're gone? And more personally, what kind of impact am I leaving behind right now? Legacy isn't reserved for famous people. Most of us will never have a bridge named after us. But every one of us leaves something behind. A kindness, an example, a sacrifice, a story. And standing there, looking at a bridge carrying Jason's name across the San Juan River, I realized that maybe legacy isn't about being remembered by everyone. Maybe it's about being remembered deeply by someone. Learning about Jason's life reminded me that stories matter, names matter, people matter. Every bridge, every memorial, every marker represents a human life that touched others in ways we may never fully understand. Across the United States and even around the world, roads and bridges are named after people, after soldiers, after leaders, after individuals whose lives left an imprint strong enough that communities chose to remember them in the places people pass through every day. Highways that stretch for miles, carrying names like the Purple Heart Trail. Bridges that span massive canyons, like the one near Hoover Dam, named for those who served and sacrificed. Even entire routes dedicated to groups like the Navajo Code Talkers, whose contributions shaped history in ways many people are still just beginning to understand. And it made me think, maybe these places aren't just about infrastructure. Maybe there's something more. In places all over the world, bridges carry memory. In Japan, the Aioi Bridge stands rebuilt after becoming part of one of history's darkest moments. In Bosnia, the Starry Most became a symbol of healing after war. In Australia, the Anzac Bridge honors those who served far from home. Different places, different histories, but the same quiet purpose: to remember. And somehow, that brings me back here, to a bridge over the San Juan River, to a name I didn't know before that day. Jason R. Workman. A life that mattered. A story that continues. We pass places like this all the time. Signs, names, markers. And it's easy to forget that every one of them was once a life. A family. A story. A person who was loved. Maybe that's what bridges like this are for. Not to just carry us across water, but to carry memory forward. To remember the people whose names we still carry with us. The people who shaped us, protected us, loved us. Some were lost in war, some in tragedy. Some simply became part of the stories that built our lives. But all of them mattered. And maybe that's why places like this stay with us. Because sometimes a bridge, or a highway, or a name on a sign becomes remembrance woven into the landscape. A quiet reminder that someone was here, someone was loved, someone's story still matters. A few months ago, I stopped because I was curious about a bridge. I wanted to know who Jason R. Workman was. What I didn't realize was that this one question would lead me to a story. And that story would lead me to a new way of seeing the world around me. In many ways, this bridge over the San Juan River didn't just connect two sides of a canyon. It started a journey. And maybe the next time you pass a name on a bridge, a highway, or a marker along the road, you'll stop and wonder about the story behind it too. Because in the end, the most meaningful journeys aren't just about where we go. They're about what we remember and who we become because of it.